Hey everybody, this is Victoria, and thank you so much for pressing play on another episode of the Choose to Think Inspirational podcast. I'm just delighted that you are here. It means the world to me that you're continuing to check in and see what's going on in another Christian gal's life who's running in the same direction that you may be. And I come with a little bit of a heavy heart. I have absolutely no script for this podcast episode. It just dawned on me actually. It's 10:22 p.m. on October the 15th, and my podcast episodes air every Thursday at 12:01 a.m. But I was sitting here just about to close shop. I'm at my parents' house right now, sitting at their big dining room table, which we have been calling the headquarters, because my dad passed away on Monday. And I'm not really prepared to talk about my dad, but I did want to let you know that he did pass away, and life has been kind of crazy since then. My husband, Jim, and I had actually been in Boston. We went back and forth before we made that decision to go on the trip. My son and daughter-in-law invited us months and months ago to take this trip to Boston to see the Tampa Bay Lightning play the Boston Bruins in hockey. My son is a big, and daughter-in-law, they're big Tampa Bay fans. We've been to Florida to watch them play there, but this was extra special. And we also had another game that we were going to play in Boston while we were there. So it was just going to be a beautiful little family getaway kind of trip. And I was agonizing actually before leaving because my dad had been so ill. And I just didn't know. And ultimately, through prayer and a lot of thought and just asking the professionals, the medical professionals, what they thought, their opinion, based on how he was doing, we got the green light to go ahead and go. So we all left on Friday morning last week, and I was back here on, Sunday night, I guess, because Dad just really went down, and I really wanted to be here when he passed. And I can tell you that he passed very peacefully in his sleep, basically. And my sister, my mom, and I were right there by his side. It was 7:45 a.m. on Monday morning. So I did get the rest of the evening. I arrived a little after midnight, into that early Monday morning, around midnight, 12:15 or so. So I did get to spend some time with him and to let him know that I was here. And so anyway, I'm just not prepared to go into all of that, but needless to say, the last few days have been incredibly busy, and that's why I'm sitting here at the kitchen or the dining room table, what we're calling headquarters, like I said, trying to handle all the different things. But I thought, as I was sitting here, I was just getting ready to go upstairs and go to bed because I've been staying with Mom for a while. I just didn't want her to be alone in this big old house. So I've been here since Monday and driven back to Lexington a couple of times. And Jim finally got in. I had insisted that he stay in Boston because there was really nothing he could do here since Dad had already passed away, and they actually came back the next day anyway, so it seemed ridiculous for them to try to change all their flight patterns. It was hard enough for me to do mine on Sunday. There was a big storm that came through the Boston area, which was delaying all kinds of flights. It was a real hardship even to get home, but anyway, so I've been back to Lexington a couple of times and just doing a little errands, but mainly I've been sitting at this table with my sister, my mom, and we've been going through things. And my dad was so extremely well prepared. Matter of fact, I know this is going to sound odd, but about 2 years ago, he wanted to, basically write his obituary and go through that. So I was so reluctant, but I could tell he really wanted to have most of that finished. And so one day, I brought him like a sample copy, and we kind of filled like a template. We filled in all the blanks and just created a really good outline for what his obituary would say. So he took care of everything. I'm telling you, he took care of everything. even in his phone, he had asterisks beside all of the close family and friends that he wanted us to notify on his passing. So that was another kind of interesting thing about my dad. He was very goal oriented and project oriented, and he was so sick, so ill really the last 15 months, 12 months of his life. And things got so hard and his world got a lot smaller, but he had a lot of time to sit and think. And so he took care of so many things. And we divvied out that list. It ended up being a little over 50 people, I guess. And my children who were here, a couple of them, my sister, my nephew, they all divided that list and they just started calling those people personally to let them know of Dad's passing. And the stories that rolled in as a result of that were just they were so sweet. It was such Dad wanted other people to know, but what he didn't anticipate is how much it would bless us when we were talking to all these different people, many of whom we didn't even know who they were or what association they had with Dad. I called one gentleman and immediately he just broke down crying. He was a little younger than my dad, I think, and I actually knew him, which is one of the reasons I called him. But it was just so sad. He just, this big old grown man, just in tears on the other side of the phone. It was so sweet and just so sad. But anyway, my dad was a proud United States Army veteran. He served in Korea, and so he was associated with the VFW. And so anyway, as I was sitting here, I thought, oh my lands, I had a podcast script ready to go to read weeks ago, and even last week was like a different one. It was kind of a composite because I was getting ready to go on that Boston trip and had been so busy with Mom and Dad over the last several weeks anyway, with his increased health needs and the concerns we had there. And so that last week podcast was a composite. I really loved that episode though, because it went through some of the interviews that I had had this year, and I just took out some of the best parts, or the parts where they were talking about the brain, the Bible, and thoughts and attitudes, mindsets, that sort of thing, and kind of put all those together. I really love that. But I was sitting here and I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't have a podcast for tomorrow. I don't have an episode. And this would be the first time in over 6 years that a podcast episode did not go out. And I thought, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to take 10 or 15 minutes, and I'm going to read my dad's obituary to you and some of the scriptures that are his favorite that he wanted, that will be read tomorrow at his funeral. But I also want to tell you that my dad was my biggest cheerleader. And every little post I would make on Facebook, he would be putting all these emojis and, just rooting us on. He would just make so many wonderful comments and encouragement. And he was, I would go away from the app and I would come back and there'd be like 23 notifications. It would be all my dad, right? So I'm really going to miss that. Just someone on the other line, right? I hope I can get through this. Okay, let me try to read his obituary to you. It says this: Rexford Joseph Johnson, husband of Helen Elaine Thomas Johnson, passed peacefully into eternity from his home in Winchester, Kentucky on October 13th, 2025. And by the way, my mom, my sister, and I, like I said, we were right there beside him. And eventually his heart just stopped and he drew his last breath. But it was very, very sweet and he was so calm. I was a little bit worried because Dad had advanced stages of COPD, and I thought, oh, would he be gasping for breath at the very end because he was on oxygen all the time? But he didn't, not at all. He just took a breath with a long pause and he never breathed again. It was very, very peaceful. Rex was born on August 25th, 1938 in Clearfield, Kentucky, the third of 10 children of Joe D. Johnson and Linda Johnson Lowe. He is survived by his only and beloved sister, Carolyn Brown, she's wife to Paul Brown of Moorhead, Kentucky, and sisters-in-law, Janine Lyndall Johnson, Gloria Jean Johnson, Barbara Ann Johnson, Colleen Joy Johnson, Leanna Opal Davis, Gloria June or Joy Thomas, and Pamela Diane Thomas, all of Morehead, Kentucky. He was preceded in death by his 8 brothers: Kenneth Clay Johnson, Glendon Ray Johnson, Ronald Lee Johnson, Douglas Dean Johnson, Raymond L. Johnson, Gary Ivo Johnson, Ernie Lee Johnson, Michael Anthony Johnson, as well as his brothers-in-law, Andrew Jackson Martin, Sr., Charles Richard Davis, Arthur Martin, Silas Glenmore Thomas, Jr., and James Everett Thomas. Rex wed his loving wife Helen on July 1st, 1961. They were blessed with 2 daughters, Sandra Lynn Johnson of Winchester, Kentucky, and Victoria Donna Leyden, James Peter Leyden of Lexington, Kentucky. Rex was the proud grandfather to 5 grandchildren: Elaine Marie Granados, Edwin Granados Jr., William Joseph Walker, Brianna Christine Walker, Getty Lee Walker, Kristen Michelle Walker, Matthew Alexander Walker, Annika Swinford, and David Rexford Johnson, as well as 5 great-grandchildren: Ella Christina Granados, Edwin Romeo Granados III, Demelza Rose Walker, Thane Andrew Walker, and Locke Avery Walker. Rex is also survived by many loving nieces and nephews whom he loved dearly. Rex grew up in Round County, Kentucky, and as a young man proudly served his nation in the United States Army while stationed in Korea. He later invested the majority of his vocational years as a life insurance salesman and for 48 years held management positions, including senior vice president. Rex was a life member and served as the post commander for the Veterans of Foreign Wars in Winchester, Kentucky, Post 2728. He was commissioned a Kentucky colonel in 1974 by Governor Wendell H. Ford for his significant contributions to his community. Rex was also a proud member of the Masonic Lodge as well as the American Legion, both in Morehead, Kentucky. Rex was musically gifted and played the guitar and the harmonica. He loved being outdoors, hunting, and trap shooting, and was a skilled carpenter. In fact, the table I'm at right now, our headquarters table, is one that he made. It's about, goodness, it's probably 8 feet long and maybe would that be maybe 4 feet. It's a long and narrow one because we have so many people in our family. But he made this table. He also, I remember he went through a season of making Yule logs, and he gave to all of the kids because there are a lot of cedar trees where they live, where my parents live, and he was cutting down those cedars, and he found just the right ones to make Yule logs, and so he did that gave everyone one. I've had one, matter of fact, for, I don't know, decades, literally, that he made for me way back when. And so he was always doing those sorts of things, just making things. He made bench. We've got a bench in our house that he made, and shelves, and just so many different things. He was so gifted like that. And also, in addition to the guitar and the harmonica, we didn't say he also played the ukulele. He also enjoyed shooting pool. Matter of fact, he was such a good pool player. He had so many awards and just like these trophies that they would give out for playing pool. And he loved to play cards. He loved to play like rummy and pinochle. And he mostly loved to spend time with his family. The family would like to express their deepest gratitude to the Veterans Hospital in Lexington, Kentucky for their continued care and dedication to serving veterans, the American Legion of Morehead, Kentucky, the Masonic Lodge of Morehead, Kentucky, and the Patriot Guard Riders of Northern Kentucky. The Riders are a motorcycle group, and they put out a mission nationwide recruiting motorcycle riders, to lead the procession from the funeral home to the actual cemetery. And we're so excited that those Patriot Guard riders will be there, and Dad wanted that. He also, is entitled and desired a full military funeral, which he will also have. They will do, the American Legion matter of fact, they start the actual order of ceremony. I'll talk about that in a moment, but they come in and they do their salutes, and they come in to God Bless America, and they have, their own little ceremony and ceremonial type things that they do during the actual service. So we're very excited and honored that they'll be there as well. The visitation is this Thursday, will be the day this episode airs, and there will be Masonic services that evening at 7. Then the funeral is officiated by Pastor Larry Robinson of Spring Street Baptist Church in Mount Sterling, and it will be held, the actual funeral, at 11 o'clock on Friday. And this is all at Northcutt and Son Home for Funerals in Moorhead, Kentucky. And then later, my dad will be buried out at Dittany Ridge Cemetery. It's way up on the ridge, as they call it. It's fairly remote, but many of his brothers, you heard that my dad he survived 8 of his brothers. He was my Aunt Carolyn's last living relative, and she's almost my sister and my age. That's how she was the baby of the family, but my dad was up at the top. So there's a big age gap between my dad and his baby sister. The pallbearers will be his 5 grandsons, William Walker, Getty Walker, Matthew Walker, Edwin Granados, David Johnson, and his son-in-law, James Lydon. Honorary pallbearers will be Paul Brown, he's my uncle, Andy Martin, my cousin, Nathan May, Justin Perkins, Shane Wall, those are all my cousins, and then a good friend who's like a family, just adopted in, Ray Stafford. And in lieu of flowers, expressions of sympathy may take the form of donations in memory of Rexford Johnson, and that's to the veterans of foreign wars, the American Legion, or the Masonic Lodge. And then my dad was 87, so he did live a long and robust life. And I realized so many of my friends, their parents are no longer with them, and yet I've had this amazing privilege to have my parents for so many years, and I don't take that lightly. I know it's been a big blessing, even though these last several weeks and months have been terribly difficult. Sometimes I felt like I'm just in a brain fog, and it's been just emotionally and mentally exhausting, all the things that we've been going through. I'm still very much aware that I've had the opportunity to see my dad, to hold his hand, to be with him. And that's something that I did cherish every single day. So we'll start the ceremony. Oh, that's my husband calling. Hold on. Hey there. Hey, sweetie. I'm actually recording a podcast episode, if you can believe that. I realized that today's Wednesday, right? And I thought, oh my goodness, I've got to get that done. And then I thought, well, I could also pass, but I was getting ready to go upstairs, and I thought, nope, I'm just going to record something. So I was reading Dad's obituary and talking about the order of ceremony, and I'm going to read the 3 prayers. And so that's why I didn't call you yet. I think you may have texted a little bit ago too. I got you on speaker. I'm still recording. You can say hi.
I know. I just want to say good night. I'm going to bed. So.
Okay. Okay. Well, sleep well. I love you.
All right. I love you too.
All right. Sweet dreams. I'll chat tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, honey. Bye. Bye. So, the order of ceremony that we're going to do, the American Legion will come into America the Beautiful, and then we have a beautiful piano rendition of Amazing Grace. It is so beautiful, that will play, just kind of set the tone, and it's not somber, it's very pleasant, it's beautiful, but it's comforting. And then we'll have a scripture reading, which will be, let's see, I've got the wrong, I'm actually reading. We had so many versions of this, the actual, the memorial card, and I may have to actually get one. Let me grab one of the originals, because I'm reading from an older one. But here we go. And so the scripture reading, Annika, my dad's granddaughter, or my daughter-in-law, is going to read Matthew 6:9 through 15. Kristen, another granddaughter, my son Getty's wife, will read Psalm 16. And then the pastor, Larry Robinson, will welcome everyone with a prayer. We'll do a series of family tributes. Elaine, my daughter, who's my dad's granddaughter, right, and Edwin, her husband, they have some family stories to share. My sister and I are going to do something a little bit unique. We kind of went back and forth on whether we would speak, but we thought we would write something called What Kind of Man? And then we would list so many of the memories that we remembered, like what kind of man would give his 2 daughters, a bar of soap, and let them go out into a rainstorm and scrub it up in the front yard. And that's what he did. I'll never forget that. It's just one of those memories. He let us go outside and pretend like we were taking a shower out in the rain. He gave us a bar of soap and shampoo, and we did it. And it was one of those rains where there was no lightning and thunder. It was just a good hard downpour kind of rain, and it was so fun. She and I both remember that. So we have a series of What Kind of Man Would, and we're going to share those together. That way, we're not telling big long stories because we will get all choked up, and we're not too wordy. We're just very short and sweet with little memories about Dad. And then we will open the floor for anyone to share any memories, just to give everyone a chance to say something about Dad. We'll also then have another scripture reading, which my daughter-in-law Brianna, my son Will's wife, who is Dad's granddaughter, right, will read the 23rd Psalm. Then the pastor will preach his message and share. And then anyone who knew my dad knew that he was such a great, he just loves the United States, and he wanted to have, we're going to recognize the military heroes that are there. So many of them are, and we're going to have them stand and applaud for them. And then we're going to play, is it Lee Greenwood? Is that his name? God Bless the USA. It was one of my dad's favorite songs. So we're going to have that sung. And then David Willoughby, his friend, will come forward and do something called the Long Farewell. There'll be a prayer by the pastor again, and then the American Legion will present my mom with the flag. After that point, all the guests will be invited to go outside for the 3-round volley or the 21-gun salute, and then we will proceed over to the actual gravesite. But the other song that my dad wanted was, oh shucks, what's the name of the other one is on the slideshow. My son-in-law Edwin has worked hours and hours trying to, we've all been sending him photographs, right? And so he's the one in charge of the actual slideshow. My parents actually had 65 years together, married, and when they turned 50, we did a slideshow. So we're going to have that slideshow going on one of the TVs at the funeral home, and then Edwin is working on the one that's more current, that has all the grandchildren and the great grands in it, that we've all been sending him pictures for. So he's going to have that one going, and it's Carrie Underwood who sings the song, and I'm just going to go crazy, but I'm not able to tell you the name of that song that goes. Hold on, I'm going to look in so many details swirling around in my head, but let me go and see if I can't find. We sent them all, of course, to Edwin. Let's see. I'll try to tell you the name of that. So many things, so many details, so many phone calls, so much research, just so much. It's overwhelming, really. You know the Carrie Underwood song. It's one that maybe I gave that to just Edwin. I think I did. Hold on. I'm sorry. Like I said, I was not really. Okay. How Great Thou Art, though. I don't know. I can't believe I didn't think of that, but it's Carrie Underwood singing How Great Thou Art, and that goes to all the photos that we're sending. And Edwin, thank you so much for doing all of that. But I also wanted to close this particular episode. It's not really it is a tribute to my dad, but you may not, I don't know if you even know him, but so many people, my friends, they've written, we know how much you loved your dad. And what I said on Facebook, I just said, it's my heart can't hold the love that I have for him. And that's why it's breaking. And I know that you have lost someone you love, or admire, cherish, respect. And I know you know that feeling. You want to talk to him one more time. You want a few do-overs because there are regrets. I think everybody has those, like, oh, why did I get so short with Dad about that issue? Or why did I, there's that role reversal that kind of takes place, or why did I snap at him about that? Or, those sorts of things. But, I just was holding his little hairbrush, and
I sat in his chair last night about 30 minutes before I went to bed. And it's just like we want to be near them, right? Well, here are some of his favorite Bible verses, which will be read at his funeral. Matthew 6:9-15. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. Psalm 16. Keep me safe, my God, for in you I take refuge. I say to the Lord, you are my Lord. Apart from you, I have no good thing. I say of the holy people who are in the land, they are the noble ones, in whom is all my delight. Those who run after other gods will suffer more and more. I will not pour out libations of blood to such gods or take up their names on my lips. Lord, you alone are my portion and my cup. You make my lot secure. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Surely I have a delightful inheritance. I will praise the Lord who counsels me. Even at night my heart instructs me. I keep my eyes always on the Lord. With him at my right hand, I will not be shaken. Therefore my heart is glad and my tongue rejoices. My body also will rest secure, because you will not abandon me to the realm of the dead, nor will you let your faithful one see decay. You make known to me the path of life. You will fill me with joy in your presence, with eternal pleasures at your right hand. And the last one is the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd. By the way, my dad would recite this every single week to both the Lord's Prayer and then Psalm 23 to one of my dear friends, Candy, who would come as his chaplain and visit Dad so often. And he would recite it to her. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So tomorrow we will be celebrating the life of Rexford Joseph Johnson. My dad, Paps, I call him Paps, my father, my earthly father. And then on Thursday, he will traditionally be buried. I don't look forward really to seeing him tomorrow in the casket. He wants an open casket. That was, everything is very traditional for him. And that's going to be hard for us. So I would appreciate your prayers. And, having a parent pass is a thing. And there were two men who came to actually pick up his body. And I'll say this too about the day he died. The hospice nurse actually was the one who pronounced death about an hour after he actually died. But they said, you know what, you can have his body here for as long as you want. And I know that may sound odd to some of you, but we just kept him here. And oddly enough, his body stayed warm a long time. That was something I did not expect. I kind of thought that as soon as I'd never been around anyone who passed away, by the way, never. I've been, at the side of people who were very, very, very sick, like my grandmother, but never right by someone. And it was such a blessing that my sister, my mom, and I all stood there beside him. It was such a blessing. I have so thanked the Lord for that. So thank the Lord for that. What an honor to be there. And he knew we were there. But we just kept him here. And some of the family members wanted to see him before he left his home, because he loved this home. My parents have lived here for literally, I don't know how long, decades. They've lived here forever. They built this house. And so some people wanted to come here. And so we just kept his body there, and we would go over and just, be beside him. I would just hug on him and talk to him still. And it was so sweet. It was one of the sweetest, almost sacred times that you can ever imagine. I never knew people could even do that. And so we had him for probably about 6 or 7 hours, and it was really lovely. And finally, the hearse, the funeral home came. They pulled up, and 2 gentlemen came, and they took care of his body, and they just did such a, they were so respectful. And I, they Mom said goodbye inside, and Sandy and my sister, and I went ahead and I followed them out, and he covered his head, and they put the gurney into the hearse, and then they shut the curtains on the hearse, which is just like, I guess, kind of how if the hearse is traveling down the road, you'll know that if the curtains are closed, it probably means that someone's being carried in there. And I watched them go all the way down the driveway and all the way out to the main road as far as I could see them go. And then I just sat there outside, but they were so respectful. And the gentleman, one of them, I was just crying so much, and he looked at me and he said, there's a hurt in your heart that just nobody can take away. And he said, if I could, I would. And he said, he was hugging me, and he said, I'm just so sorry. He said, I know how it is. I lost my papa. So I think you may know what this is like. And I'm sorry for your loss too. And I now know how much, I think it'll make me more compassionate when people lose people, because you never know until you know, right? And there's no way around this. You always have to go through these things. You can't get around them. And I'm so thankful that we have the Lord by our side. We have the Spirit to comfort us in ways that nobody else can. And of course, God can take away that pain, but we're talking about grief, and it's just human of us to be sad and grieve. And I'm so grateful that we can actually grieve, because it helps us to appreciate all the other things in life so much more. And I know that God is with us as we go through this, and that He'll be our shield, and He is our comfort and our helper and our intercessor. He'll be with us. But God bless you. Thank you for tuning in. I'm sure this isn't exactly what you were thinking you would hear, but it's a little snippet of what's going on in my life, and at such an important, critical time of my life. And thank you for tuning in. God bless you.